is the beginning of a videotape of the California Stuarts. We will start with a photograph book that was presented to Miss Jeanette Scott by W. H. Stuart in memory of the strollers and the good times in the old Frisco before the disaster of April the 18th, 1906. Dated June the 17th, 1906. Respectfully yours, W. H. Stuart. The strollers were Jeanette Scott with Lulu Schroeder and Will H. Stewart with Robert C. Turkin. Signed, Wee Wee. With a fancy scroll underneath it. What's left of the top of Strawberry Hill? I know nothing more of the subject. This book is regards of the earthquake in 1906. This is a fire on top of a building. Mutual Savings, Palace Hotel, and a Chronicle from Grant and Geary Streets. Hales from 6th and Market. I believe that was a department store. They appear to be rebuilding the St. Francis Hotel. This is the City Hall from Hayes and Larkin Street. And this view is from Turk and Van Ness at City Hall. New post office building at 7th and Mission Streets. Looked like it didn't suffer too much. Stood up pretty well. The U.S. Mint at 5th and Mission. They appear to be repairing the dome on the Herbania Bank at the corner of Jones and McAllister. The new flood building and Emporium from Mason and Market Streets. No comment. Looks like a pile of junk. The Majestic Theater from Market near 9th Street. The Poodle Dog Cafe at Eddie and Mason. Must have been one of their hangouts. St. Ignatius Church and College from Hayes and Van Ness Streets. a dynamited building near Montgomery and California streets. Looking towards the Fairmont Hotel in Nob Hill from O'Farrell and Van Ness. The gas works at 5th and Howard. A bread line at 18th and Connecticut. Bill and Jeanette attended Heald's Business College in San Francisco, California. She was living with her parents in Oakland, and he was living with his Aunt Sylvia at this house at 146.
This is the only known picture that I have of the Wellmans. That is Miles Wellman seated. To the left of the picture is Amos and Amy and Aaron. They were the first triplets born in California. Next is Sylvia. The next is George. And the next is Ella. And the next is William. Now I have no picture of NC Melissa. I have no picture of NC Melissa, the mother of the Wellman children. She probably took the picture. This is a picture of Sylvia Wellman Rockefeller and Ella Wellman Powell. As you will notice, they are both standing at the same level. Aunt Ella was about 5'11", and Sylvia was just a tad shorter. This is a picture of Ella Wellman Powell and her daughter, Incy. As you will notice, Incy is standing a step above Aunt Ella, so you can see what a tall woman she was. All of the Wellmans were very tall. This is a picture of Mark Rosane Stewart, father of William H. Stewart, and he was the son of Upton Harrison Stewart and Eliza Jane Milner Stewart. They crossed the plains in 1848. This is Mark Rosane Stewart. He was 6'5", standing beside a friend unknown to us. And these are the only two pictures that we have of him. This is William H. Stewart on, I do not know which ranch this was taken at, either the Wellman Ranch in Wheatland or the Stewart Ranch in Penn Valley. He was passed back and forth between the Wellmans and the Stewarts until he grew up and was ready to go to college. This is a tintype, and this must be from the middle or late 1800s. It's a picture of James Scott and his two sons, James, George, and Robert. This is from a tintype. This is a picture of Janet Calder Morgan, the mother of Nellie Mahoney Scott Smith. in her younger years. This is a picture of Janet Calder Morgan, taken in later years. We have little or no history. They came apparently into Canada and then into the United States. This is a picture of Charles Morgan, the brother of Janet Calder Morgan. I have no history on him at all. This is James George Scott, father of Jeanette May Scott Stewart. I imagine taken early in the marriage. This is Ellen Elizabeth Mahoney Scott. I believe it was taken before she married James George. And she went by the name of Nellie. We used to laugh and tell her she looked like Tilly off the pickle boat, which she didn't think was really amusing. But they were married in Buffalo. This is a picture of Ellen Elizabeth Mahoney Scott and her husband James George Scott and Jeanette May Scott when she was, I would say, around 2 years old. This is Jeanette May Scott in her christening dress. No date. This is Jeanette May Scott, and she looks to be about 3 or 4. Jeanette May Scott is on the far left. I believe the lady in the middle is Aunt Amelia Scott, wife of Robert Scott, mother of Florence, Bobby, and Gladys. Picture was taken in 1892. Jeanette May Scott is second from the left. This was at a Maccabees Lodge that my grandmother was very active in. And they had parties for the children. This is one of the occasions. This is a picture of Jeanette May Scott, I'd say about the age of 8, with her dog. I don't remember the dog's name. She grew up, she was born and raised in Oakland. This is Jeanette May Scott. I would say she was probably 12 or 13. This was a picture of Nellie Mahoney Scott. I believe she was married to William Smith by this time. She looks to be in her maybe late 20s. This is an obituary notice for the late Daniel Mahoney, and it was sent to my grandmother from someone in Buffalo. There was just the envelope, and we found it after my grandmother died in some of her papers. We know literally nothing about him. She never talked about it. We found the envelope. If there had been a letter in it, she had taken it out. The back of the envelope said, "Thought you'd like to know this." And it was mailed from Fulton Street, Buffalo. The church that he was buried from. He had 6 children, and no mention of Ellen Elizabeth. I have not done the research there. I know that when she was young, she was in a convent in Buffalo, and she never made any mention of family. So that has to be explored yet. And I have not worked on the genealogy on her side. Maybe someday. Or somebody else can take it up and do it. This is the only picture that I have of Popsy, who was William H. Smith, our step-grandfather, who was really a fine grandfather, and is, I believe, his father was a minister. I found a letter that he had joined the Masonic Lodge when he was apparently before William H. Smith left DeSoto, Kansas. Great. This is William H. Smith. I do not have a date when it was taken, but he used to tell us when we were growing up about when he was a child. He used to sit on the corral fence and watch the wagons go down the Abilene Trail. He died when he just missed making 90. He was tried awful hard to make 90, but he didn't do it. This is my favorite picture of Popsy. He certainly loved to fish. And they certainly did a lot of fishing on the Garcia River. When they moved to town, he used to go out by the lighthouse and fish along the bank out there when the salmon were running. Keep going. Keep moving up and down. There. Good to go. This is a picture of Nellie Smith taken probably around 1908. This is the wedding announcement of Jeanette May Scott and William H. Stewart. It reads, Mrs. W. It reads, Mrs. W. H. Smith requests the honor of your presence at the marriage of her daughter, Jeanette May Scott, to William Henry F. Stewart. William Henry Frederick Stewart. Wednesday evening, September 4th, 1907, at 8:30 o'clock at the Fourth Congregational Church at 34th and Grove Street, Oakland, California. Wedding picture of Jeanette May Scott. This is William Henry Frederick Stuart. This is an 8 by 10 that's very hard to get into the frame. So we'll just have to do it a little at a time. There he is. These pictures are from the family album, and it goes through, starts with Dale, and he was born August 31st, 1908, and this is the house he was born in, but there is no address. Someplace in Oakland. Dale weighed 2.5 pounds at birth, and they didn't have incubators in those days, so they put him in a shoebox on the oven door. Must have wondered they didn't fry him or bake him real good. All of the following pictures are of Dale.
This must be his christening.
Up until the point where Don is. This is a picture of Dale. What a picture out there on the step doing his thing. Must be Saturday. I think this must have been taken at the early ranch years, before the folks moved out there permanently. This is the birthplace of Donald Bruce Stewart, July 26, 1910. This is a picture of the Smith Ranch taken from up on the hill above the ranch. This had been logged off in the 1860s, and consequently there was not many trees left at the time. Don was born in a cabin up on the hill from the ranch, from the main house. And those cabins were later rented.
Just like him.
Were later. We'll move it over.
Go ahead.
My. There's a picture for Playgirl or the Hustler or something. This is Dale and Don. I don't know where this was taken. I know that my mother and father and Dale went and stayed on the ranch, and Grandpa, Popsy, and my father made ties, and that didn't work out. They couldn't make a living. So my father got a job with Pacific Gas and Electric, and they left the ranch, and my Nellie and Bill Smith moved to town and ran the hotel. These are pictures of Don's progress.
You never turned it on.
It's on. This is a picture of the family, and this is at the beginning of the Colgate years. They spent 2 years living at Colgate at the PG&E plant there, and my father was the head accountant. The Colgate years were not easy ones. You went to the town of Dobbins, and then you got on a horse and rode 8 miles out to the station at Colgate. Food was brought in on pack animals because there was nothing but a trail. While they were there, Don inhaled a watermelon seed, and my mother had to take him. He almost died. And my mother had to take him on horseback the 8 miles to Dobbins. There is my mother's friend Lori, who she had been friends with since she was a teenager, and Lori was always there. Wherever she seemed to follow my mother around wherever she went. And I think she finally got married and did not have any children and died very young. They seemed to dress little boys in girls' clothes in those days. I never could figure that one out. There's Don at 2 and 4. Here we are back at the ranch again. Popsy used to chop the wood, and it was up to somebody else to bring in the wood. He got started at an early age. This is a picture of Nellie Smith and Jane Stewart, and I have no idea where they are. These pictures are taken back at the Smith Ranch.
There it is with a boat.
Now this was taken when we lived on 99th Avenue. This is a picture of Dale and Don and my mother and Nellie, and the old lady was called Grandma Scott. Now, whether she must have been real old. And this was taken at the ranch on the platform, the dance platform out in back of the house. This is a house on Elston Avenue. That other one that I said was on 99th. We had not moved there yet. Folks certainly did move around. But this was, as I said, taken on Elston Avenue in Oakland. This is one of my favorite pictures. They were 7 and 5 at this time. They certainly didn't change much in looks over the years. There they are with William H. Stewart at the ranch.
You're not digging a well today.
They have gone, this is down at the beach, Point Arena, must be Schooner Gulch. This is where Gene Stewart was born, September 13th, 1918, at Samuel Merrill Hospital in Oakland. My father was in charge of bookkeeping there. Right after that, he got a job as superintendent of Alameda County Hospital. He was in charge of the leper colony, the tubercular sanitarium, the county hospital where people with contagious diseases were taken, and the county farm where his They didn't have street people in those days. If you didn't have a home and you were old or sick, they sent you to the county farm and you could work for your room and board. And they grew all the vegetables that were used at the hospital. My father lost that job because he would let the children from the leper colony who did not have leprosy out. This was way out in the county, far away from people. He would let the children from the leper farm go out and play on the hill in back of the hospitals. And somebody found it out and put it in the newspaper. And there was a great uproar about the lepers were out, and he lost his job. That was a 1918 playpen. This is Mary. She took care of me. She was from the county farm, and this is when they were out there at the county hospital compound. And she was my nanny. This is 9 months old. This is the Point Arena Lighthouse in 1919. We are back in Point Arena. This is a log jam on the river. That's Don. That's a dog stack. A people stack. And you can also see my grandmother's rear end sticking out there beyond the back of the boys. She was holding the dog up there. Oh. That's Don and a friend of my folks. This was a family trip to Yosemite, and this was taken along the Kings River. This is 1920 at Cedar Brook. Must have gone someplace where there was snow. No. We had, that's 99th Avenue because we had chickens. And I used to get to feed the chickens. Cedar Brook must have been someplace near Fresno. These pictures were taking it on the Kings River. Family must have gone on a camping trip. There we are on the riverbank. Still Dora. May the 2nd, 1920. This is Kings River again. This is Sequoia National Park. Well, this must have been in the wintertime. They made another trip. This is a picture of me with some of my dolls. We lived on 99th Avenue. More dolls. Never. This is Point Arena, and the boys are helping Popsy plow the alfalfa field. A picture of the Garcia River. This is a trip that we went on, and before we left, the boys had climbed the cherry tree beside the house, and they had been eating ripe cherries and throwing the green ones on the ground. Then my mother gave me a glass of milk. I was sitting on the ground eating the green ones. My mother gave me a glass of milk just before we left. And when we got down the road, I upchucked all over everybody, and so that's the picture of me. They washed me off in the river. This is 1921. No. That's the cherry tree, and that's the house on 99th Avenue. Yes. That's Point Arena on there mowing. That's back in Oakland at 99th. I don't know where they got the horses, but that we lived on 99th. My goodness. They just spoiled the daylights out of me. Now that's at the ranch. That's one of the cabins. The only cabin that was down on the same level as the house. I was 3 years old, and isn't that a hotsy-totsy outfit? It was pale pink organdy. It was an Easter outfit. more pictures of Oakland in 1922. On nice days, I used to eat my lunch outside. This is a girl who lived down the street, and that was the forerunner of the modern tricycle. The picture taken at the home of Bella Scott Fitzgerald and Edward Fitzgerald. To the left is Jean, and then Bessie Hope Lorton, who died very young after having one daughter. She died of tuberculosis, same as her mother. And next to her is her brother, William Wardlaw Lorton, known as Billy. And next is Janet Fitzgerald, daughter of Bill and Eddie Fitzgerald. This is a picture of my mother and I don't know who the two children are, but this was at Laguna Beach in Alameda. Another picture of the beach. This picture was taken in 1923 at Laguna Beach. This is a picture of a graduating class of Dale's. I don't know which school it is. He wasn't old enough at that year to have graduated from high school.
There he is in the second row.
He's in the
Third
second,
one from the end.
third from left in the second row.
Everybody's got the same hat.
This is a picture of all the boys in the class. And this is a picture of all the girls. Don't know. This is how we took the hay to the barn from the alfalfa field. The horses were Tess and Jerry. And we all got to ride on the hay wagon. There is how you would stack all the hay in stacks and then come by with a pitchfork and put it up on the wagon. There's the Garcia. Don't look like that much anymore. These were the years that Graham and Popsy ran a summer resort, and they used the cabins on the hill that were left over from the days of logging, and then there was another that was shown previously that they used for rentals, and they were wallpapered inside. They were just old wooden shacks, and they were full all the time. My grandmother just about worked herself to death.
That looks like her pops in there.
And weren't those dandy little bathing suits they wore? They were 100% wool, and when they got wet, did they sag? Now that's Dale and Don and Popsy, and in the background is what they called the dance platform, and they used to have wandering musicians come, and they would all dance madly far into the night out on the dance platform. This is Don. If he dove off there, he'd lit flat on his face in the gravel bar. But it made a good picture. Now this was taken on Coolidge at the house at 3607 Coolidge Avenue. It's a picture of us out in our backyard. My father built that house in stages. He bought two 50-foot lots, 250 by 100-foot lots, and he built the house in stages. And this, I believe, is looking toward the Gosha's house, which was right in back of us, known as Tonalati and Uncle Ted. This is a picture at the back of the ranch house, at the back steps. And these are some of the summer guests, along with the family. They had quite a clientele. They were doctors and lawyers and professional people who used to come every year. That's Don and Dale. There they are. I like that. And they also used to fist fight a lot of the ranch. Well, they recognize him. Is that Don and all? That's Don and Uncle Dunk on Benny Mule. I have it. That's Don and Benny Mule. And Uncle Dunk lived on the ranch. His name was Dunbar. And he was an old bachelor that lived on the ranch below the Smith Ranch. These are the bathing beauties. He had quite a crowd of people who used to come and stay there. Everybody had such a good time. There's Don. It's Mildred Johnson and her mother, Mrs. Johnson, my grandmother, and Don. That was 1924. They came every summer. He's carrying a gun, so they must have been hunting. Now you can skip that one and that one. 1925, another Easter outfit. Neighborhood friends. $19.26. That's Don out in the side yard at 3607 Coolidge Avenue, and in the background is the Fred Finch Orphanage. This is Point Arena, and that's at the Noble's place. It was the first ranch you came to when you came from the Smith Ranch on your way to town. That was Noble's Ranch. This little boy lived 10 miles from town and had nobody to play with, so in the summer while I was at the ranch, when the folks would go to town, they would drop me off there and I would play with him. His name was Marion. I went to high school with him later. This is a picture of Dale. This is 1926. Oh. There I am with our dog and with the doll in the doll carriage my mother got when she was 5 years old. And she is, I got her when I was 5. This is Jean and Janice. Janice lived over at the orphanage, and she used to come over. My mother used to go get her and bring her over to our house because she had no family. That was a little borrowed outfit that I borrowed from Tontalati and Uncle Ted Ghosh, who lived in back of us. I spent a great deal of time there, and this is when this one was taken down in Redwood City. It's Dorothy, somebody or other. She was Tontalati's niece. This is Donald in 1926. I don't know the name of this boat, But Dale and a boy named Frank Draskovich, who lived up the street, up Coolidge from us, went aboard this boat. I don't know where they went, but they had a job working on this boat. And there is Dale and Frank Draskovich, also known as Deitch. 1926. This is Don driving the buckboard at the ranch. And look at his hairdo. They came back. This was a bear that was tearing up the apple trees. And big brown bear. And Don and Popsy went hunting for him and got him. Now that was a trophy. They made a rug out of him, but it seems to me it didn't make a very good rug. There he is again. Oh, is that water cold? This is still 1926 at the ranch. Another horse. This is Louise Martin and Jean taking over Louise's backyard. She lived over on Rhoda. Don decided he had to have an animal. He was taking agriculture in school. And so we went to the slaughterhouse and brought home a lamb, known as Lammy. And was Lammy a pain in the head in the city? She used to come in the house and chew on the dresser drawer knobs because they were salty. And when you chased her, her feet would slip on the hardwood, the hardwood floor and the linoleum. She also went wading in my mother's fish pond. She did all sorts of things and finally got taken to the ranch. This is Meadow Park, the summer resort owned by William Stuart and Dr. Leroy Herrick. At the time, my father was part owner in Berkeley General Hospital, he and Dr. Herrick. And they the times were so good, they went off on a tangent and had a silver fox farm there at Tahoe near a big meadow up in back of Meadow Park. And there were 22 cabins and a restaurant and a store and a recreation hall, which is in the background, and a gas station. And these were the Tahoe years. And were they lovely? Just a week or so before school started, they certainly were something.
You ready?
These were the Tahoe years. And we all had our own horses. And we all rode a lot. Junior Seifert was my age. Young Bill Seifert was my age, and he used to come and spend the summers with us at Tahoe. This is Dale, 1927, standing out by the recreation hall. And this, I'm on a horse called Bolly. I wasn't old enough. That was the year I didn't have my own horse yet. That was taken at the big meadow up in back of the resort. This is Don on a horse named Lily. 1927. This is another Easter outfit, 1927. This picture is of Don at the Muskrat Farm, and that was forerunner to some bad winters where they had a very hard time keeping the muskrat ponds open. The whole Washoe tribe came down. My father was very friendly with Indians. Came down and tried to burn holes in the ice so that the muskrats wouldn't smother. This is a picture of me standing in front of the Capitol in Sacramento. We used to stop there on our way going to Tahoe. This is 1929. Another Easter outfit. Now this, the first year we were at Tahoe, was when I got stuck with riding an ornery little Shetland pony that wouldn't do anything I wanted it to do. Well, I spent more time walking and leading that thing than I did riding it. And I complained loudly. Then they decided to go find me a horse. Now this is a picture of Aunt Belle Fitzgerald, who came to visit us at Tahoe. And we had a late snow that year. Very late snow. We'll put it back there. This was the first horse they got for me, and I wasn't too happy with it. I still hadn't learned to saddle it because the saddle was too heavy to get up on the horse's back. So, I can't remember that horse's name. This is Junior Seifert, young Bill, and a girl named Joanne Evans, and myself at Tahoe in 1928. So that's Junior on the face. And there's, no, that's baby, a little girl they called Baby Doll. I don't remember her last name on one of the horses. There I am. Go back a minute. Sitting on the porch of one of the cabins. There were 22 cabins. That was my first low back bathing suit. That's Joan Seifert, Bill Seifert's little brother, little sister. I don't know, friends and relations. This is somebody in the family fishing up in back of the big meadow up in the mountains. There was a string of 22 lakes called the Velmas, and they were each lake was at a different altitude, higher altitude. And we mostly used to go to the first, second, and third lakes were the easiest to get at and weren't too far away. Used to go and stay overnight. This is Don. We'll go back to the horse. There's Don on one of his horses. I don't know which one. Lily was his favorite. He would skip those. This is my father, Bill Stuart.
These are 1932.
1930. This is Don and Dale out in front of, in 1932, in front of Meadow Park. There I am on my beautiful horse, Black Beauty. Boy, could she run. And that's Junior on Bessie. You can skip that. That's Junior on Bessie again. This was taken in Point Arena in 1933. The dog's name is Sandy. He was a white shepherd. There he is. This is taken in Point Arena when we lived in the Sam Ainsley house. He is in the backyard. This was taken at the ranch. The horse's name is Smokey. He was borrowed from Kaler's. Down on the river. That's Don and his Model A Roadster. How he used to fly around. That's back at the high school in Point Arena. There's Dale and Don and I standing in front of the This is Dale and Don and Dad in Point Arena out beside the Sam Ainsley house. There we are, the group. There's Dale and Yvette when they were first married. Came to visit. And Dale and Yvette and Don and I. Yvette and my mother and I. I think this is Dale and Gregory. This is skipping a few years. That's taken at Graham's. There's Dale and Yvette and Gregory. I think.
That's Douglas then.
And Douglas. Is that Ma Buckridge? Oh, that's Dale and Yvette and Mabel and Bert Buckridge out at the Buckridge Ranch. I have to go back to the ranch. I found a whole bunch more pictures, and they're not all in order. You'll just have to bear with me. This is a group of people that before they ran the hotel in Point Arena and before they had the ranch, they used to camp at the Mungavin Ranch every summer. I don't know who these This is part of the group that they camped with. Here they are beside their tent,
Looks like they're going hunting.
and they always did some hunting and fishing while they were there. When you went fishing, you always had a place where you could, after you caught all your fish, you could come back and build a campfire, and you'd usually fry the fish, and everybody'd come back from fishing and you'd have a fish fry on the gravel barn. This is the alfalfa field, and after the alfalfa was the hay was in, then they turned the cows loose in there to feed for pasture. See the old stumps of the big old redwoods that they cut out of there when they logged the first time. This is the only picture I have of the flume that started up at the ranch from that small mill that was right up by the barn, what was left of it. And this is the only picture I have, and it was, I don't know who the woman is, but it's the only picture we have of the flume. This is Graham and somebody being funny down by the river below the alfalfa field. Can you imagine going fishing with all those clothes on? That's Graham and Popsy, and if you'll notice the banks, that all the lumber and all the trees have are gone. And by the time I got there and remember the river, that had all grown up again. If you'll watch the different pictures, you'll see as the years went by how the mountains were covered with trees again. Several years, Popsy built when the crossing wasn't good, he built a car bridge. Man, was it precarious. If you didn't hit it just right, you were either going to fall in the river or get stuck where there was no cross pieces. Some years, the river in midsummer would have a lot of water, and other years there would be more gravel bar than river. Steelhead, the way you used to get them out of the river, but I'm afraid no more. The original picture was the Point Arena Hotel, the way it looked when Graham and Popsy ran it. It had a big porch across the front of it, even when I was in high school. And we used to call it Seal Rock because all the old gentlemen used to collect on the porch every day. Then when A.O. bought it, he took off the porch and modernized the front of the building. This is the way Popsy, when they first ran the resort, used to go to town to pick up the new guests for the ranch. And it was 10 miles. I don't know who all the guests are, but that's Popsy in his brand spanking new Model T. And then that's the way they took the guests to the ranch. This is, I am at the far left, and then there's Graham and Dale and Gracie and Don and the dog in the alfalfa field. That's my mother and father with their backs to the camera at the ranch. This is the afternoon gab session, sitting under the apple tree, right outside outside the kitchen. Don't know who's driving the wagon, but that's an old lumber wagon or freight wagon that they used to carry just about anything. This is a little freighter that used to come into Point Arena. It was called the Seafoam. And they got in a big storm and they tried to come in the channel and the waves carried them up on the beach. Can you imagine going camping all dressed like that? I can't. This is where they camped on the Mungabin Ranch. These are just friends, but I thought the fashions were interesting. This is Graham and Popsy in the early days at the ranch. Now she's getting modern. Look how she tucked her skirts up. What a lack of modesty. Sometimes when they had an overflow of guests, they had to put up a tent. This is Graham and Popsy in later years at the ranch after they quit having a resort. I call this one Nellie on the Rocks. Every summer when the river got low, where there was a shallow riffle, Popsy would put stepping stones rather than build a footbridge. I always get a kick out of this one. I don't know who the woman is, but I have a story. The chicken is Betty. She was a very good friend of my grandmother's, and she and my grandmother used to hold long conversations. And one night, when Graham wanted to have chicken the next day, after dark, she would go to the chicken house and she would reach in and grab a chicken. And Betty would always call out to her so that she wouldn't grab her. Well, Betty must have been sleeping one night because Graham reached in and grabbed a chicken and twisted its neck. It wasn't until a little later she discovered it was Betty. And so the next day I remember very well. She was frying Betty and crying. That must be Graham. And I don't know what she had on, but she apparently didn't want to turn around. Aren't those suits classy little numbers? They were 100% wool, and when they got wet, they sagged. These are the 7 darlings. This is the picture of the ranch from the top of the hill. Up on the hill by the cabins, right across from where the cabin where Don was born. And there's Graham fishing. Must have been kind of a dry year when the river gets down that small.
Early 1900s.
I don't know who that is fishing, but the river was apparently up that year. Isn't that a pretty little river? This is a picture you can see in the distance, see the swinging bridge. You had to use it in the winter and park the car over on the other side because when the river was up, then there was no way to get across to go to town. Looks like the fishing was good that day. Merrill says this is a repeat, but that's all right. This is Popsy and Don and Dale. They're plowing. This is a picture of Graham out by the stump in the yard. This is the ladies by the log jam. Must be some of the Seven Darlings. If you were going to go anyplace, this was the way you went. Load up the wagon. This was the road to the ranch coming down the hill. Every year. Must be hunting season. Everybody's sitting around getting ready to go. This is one of the girls, all gussied up. I don't know who she is. Here they are, having lunch on the gravel bar. And I don't know what she's aggravated about, but it sure looks like she's telling somebody off. This is another picture of the ranch in later years. You can see how the hills are covered with trees again. Just another fashion plate.
Looks like a group of guys.
This is Popsy beginning to mow the alfalfa field. I don't know why it was, but everybody always sat on the porch to the kitchen and had all their pictures taken. That's guests and family. Just a bunch of groupies having fun, and that water has not gotten any warmer. And here he is again, mowing the alfalfa. See how daring they were, driving all the way from the city to the ranch in their fancy automobile. Those are Graham's shoes in the foreground, and they are undoubtedly trying to talk me into that cold water. This is not a very clear picture, but Popsy is slopping the hogs. The hog pen was right up by the cow barn. Oh, Graham and Popsy in the early years on the ranch. Picture of Graham and the dog on the kitchen steps. This is the dance hall before it had a roof, but they still had dances. The man on the far right was their music man for the night. This is a picture of the dance hall after it got its roof. And lots of fun out there. Guess they're waiting for the dance to start. This is one end of the dining room at the ranch. It was a big room, and it had smaller tables that would seat four, all at the other end of the room. This is the end near the kitchen door. This is the living room at the part of it. It was another huge room, and that lamp is hanging in my dining room. This is a picture of the ranch house in the early days, taken from across the river and up on the hill. Graham in the early days, she's sitting on the front porch.
The dogs are there. Boys' dogs.
This is a postcard from Point Arena in 1910, and it was taken from up on the hill by Pedretti Ranch. Coming
From the west.
same old alfalfa field with the same great big stumps of the original redwoods, only the trees are growing now. More of the alfalfa field and a lonesome cow. That's Rose on the left, and Jean and Jane. She and her husband were friends of my mother and father. This is the story of the stump. It only stood about 40 feet away across the yard from the house. And if you will look and see how low the ivy is growing on it, the shed was built attached to the stump. And when you walked into the shed, it looked like it was a wall with tools hung on it. It really wasn't. It was on hinges and it swung aside. And there was a room. The stump was hollow. And there was a good-sized room in it, which was used for hanging deer to cool. It was always cool and shady. And they had screen across the top so that the flies couldn't get in. And the game warden never knew when we had a deer. And here they are standing in front, and see how the ivy has grown. It totally covered the stump. And that game warden never did find out there were deer in there. Thanks a lot.
Go say what you want to say.
The game warden used to say that the Stuarts were outlaws. And he just didn't understand that we had a long season and a short season. And nothing ever went to waste. Now here's a picture of the good old days. No stress, no strain. Not much, at any rate. But this is the way that Popsy did it. As you can see, I'm riding up there. Everybody took a ride on the wagon. And then we hauled it up to the barn and put the hay in the barn. Now here's where he really started getting modern. That's my father sitting up on the front end. Somebody had to ride on the hood to keep the front wheels on the ground, particularly when it went up the hill to the barn. So nobody got to ride the wagon. Well, here we are. Mother, Dale, Jean, Dad, and Don on the porch of the Sam Ainsley house. That was the second house we lived in Point Arena. This is not too long after, a year or so after we moved to Point Arena. Don went in the CCCs, Civilian Conservation Corps, and where he was allowed to keep $10 a month and 30 was sent home. This was during the Deep Depression, when everybody was trying to help everybody else out. This is roll call, another picture at the CCC. I don't know where Donald is in it, but he's somewhere. I don't remember how long he was in. A year, maybe. This is Graham and Popsy's house on the highway when they first moved in. This is Graham and Mother shopping in Santa Rosa in the 30s. Now we have the postmasters. This is postmaster number 1, Popsy, William H. Smith, in front of the post office. This is my father, William H. Stewart, postmaster number 2. And it's David and Diane and me. I could not find one of my father alone, but he's the postmaster in there. This is my mother, the postmaster. And there's my father, all retired. This is a picture of Bill Stewart and Jane, retired from the post office. This is my mother in front of some of the apartments, one of the apartments that my father built down back of the house. This is a picture of Jane Stewart after she was retired from the post office. This is a picture of Dale and Bill Stewart out in the driveway by the house. This is a picture of William H. Smith sitting out in his sun porch in the house on the highway. This is my father down at the beach, probably been abaloneing. That's a picture of me with my mother's dog, Duchess, whose American Kennel Club name was San Francisco June Rose, given to my mother by Rose Seifert. There's a picture of the big house when my folks just bought it. And in your day, you will remember it a lot differently, because they landscaped it and changed the outside of it. This is a picture of the goldfish pond that my father built in the Laugh House. I guess Gregory and everybody but the youngest kids will remember the Laugh House. This is Grandpa and the kids who went fishing. This is Yvette and Greg and Doug. I think they're sitting on the porch of the Ainsley house. Or maybe it's up at the Pink House, I don't know. Forgotten. This is Don and Arlie, early in their marriage. This is Don and Arlie and Don's hounds that he was using to track down bear and cougar that were bothering the animal. This is Jesse Buckridge Beeler and Ken Beeler. Jesse was Arlie's sister, younger sister. This is the suspension bridge that Don and Kenny put in down on the Buckridge Ranch. Everything had to be taken across the bridge. All their supplies, including their propane gas tanks, which used to be put in a wheelbarrow. That should have been fun. This is Graham and Popsy in their 50th wedding anniversary finery, taken in front of their house. This is the golden anniversary invitation. They were married in 1884 and had their party in 1944. Yeah. That's cousin Eugene Fitzgerald and Graham and Popsy and Uncle Eddie Fitzgerald. They came up for a visit after Aunt Belle died. There they are, but I don't remember the year. In the 20s, Point Arena had a fire engine that sat about halfway up. The fire station was halfway up the hill. It had a big bell up on top of it. And if there was a fire, they would ring the bell and everybody would come rushing out. And the fire truck was a Ford truck, and it could go down the hill all right, but it could not make it up the hill with a load of water. So everybody would rush out of the stores and get behind the fire truck and push it up the hill. I think eventually they got a bigger fire engine. In 1945, Point Arena had a pretty good fire. And, of course, one little bitty fire engine didn't quite make it. As I recall, they didn't even have fire hydrants. And there's another picture of the fire and the damage it did. Did it on both sides of the street. Got quite a few buildings. I believe this is the last picture that there was of the two of them. And there is Arlie crossing the footbridge down at the Buckridge Ranch. And the name of this one is And the Rains Came. This is from the bridge where Don's located now on Eureka Hill Road. Did somebody say something about a river ran through it? This is where the road ran through it. This is what's left of the old road, and that out there in the center is the old bridge foundations. This is from the new bridge. Just looking downriver from the bridge. Field across the river where Arlie used to grow hay and let her cows feed.
Right up to the edge.
And that's on a turn where the water's running pretty fast.
Right through the trees.
Right through the trees, and probably take them out. At the top is the gate down into the garden from up by the road. And I guess this at the bottom is the fence around the garden. It was up about, that fence was about 10 feet tall. This is Don and Arlie's trailer after they lived down there for a while on Eureka Hill Road. Donald Stewart and Arlie Buckridge Stewart sitting in front of their trailer house. This is Don and Arlie down by the Buckridge barn. Right at the end of the bridge. This is Don, and I don't recognize who he's talking to, and that's Arlie, bopping along. Arlie was a 19th century woman who never moved into the 20th century. She did everything the old way. This picture was taken when we lived in Pleasant Hill, and a couple of people there I can't recognize. The picture is kind of dark up in one corner. Sorry. But this is just an odd one that I found. Well, this is as sharp as we can get it. You can see, however, see out. You can all recognize yourselves. We must have had a big house party or something. This is the Gregory Stewart family on the night of Gail's installation. This is a picture of Paulette and Don down by the garden patch. I don't know what year it was taken. And here we are, Don and Yvette and Jean and Merrill, taking it over at Lake County when we had the gathering there. I don't remember what year. I found some more pictures of the Colgate years, and Dale was about 4 and Don was about 2. You can see the houses for the married people in the right-hand corner, and then you see the water coming from the plant itself, and the big building on the far side was where the unmarried men lived. This is another picture, and it shows the flume that comes down the mountain, down to the plant. When they released the water, my mother said it used to shoot clear across the canyon. In the background, they apparently had a very, very well-built suspension bridge to cross to the other side. This is a picture of the walkway on top of the flume, and this is the way they bought all their groceries and supplies and wives home. There was just that narrow walkway. That flume was about 16 feet in diameter and full of water. This was another fun way to cross the river. It's called a Flying Dutchman. You used to get on it and it would go real fast out to the middle of the river, and working your way up the other side wasn't so much fun.
Your hand run over.
You had to pull yourself hand over hand on the cable to get it up there. This is a picture of my mother, and I guess one of the women from the group. And I don't know why they would cross the river. There wasn't much over there. Another shot of how to break up a dull day. And this is the last of the pictures. And so, dear hearts, we come to the end. I hope you all enjoy it. The folks lived a lot of places and had a real good life. And so, this is Stuart Allison, and I'm saying that's the way it was.